Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Hogwarts, a magical castle full of secrets, enchantments, and little details that the films barely touched upon. Today we'll revisit some of the school's most fascinating features, ones many people don't even know exist. Enjoy the video. Number 1. A castle in Scotland. Hogwarts' location is securely hidden by dozens of spells. Some are meant to protect the students, while others repel muggles. You won't find it on any muggle map, and satellite images of the area would show something entirely different. Even if an ordinary person walked right up to the castle, they'd only see ruins with a sign reading, "Keep out." Yes, Hogwarts stands in Scotland, but to the non-magical world it might as well not exist. Number 2. Muggle technology is powerless. Inside Hogwarts, no Muggle-made device works. Mobile phones, laptops, cameras, all useless. This explains why the students have no gadgets, and let's be honest, most modern teenagers wouldn't exactly be thrilled about that. Interestingly, there have been exceptions. For example, Colin Creevey's old-fashioned camera somehow functioned. Number 3. 142 staircases. The staircases in Hogwarts have a mind of their own. They can rotate, change direction, move up or down, and some even vanish a few steps at a time. Poor Neville Longbottom could certainly tell you how many times he ended up in trouble because of them. In the films, this chaos was toned down. We never saw the disappearing steps or the full unpredictability of the staircases. Number 4. Tricky doors. It's not just the staircases that keep you on your toes. Many of Hogwarts' doors require a special approach, a password, a song, a riddle, or even a tickle. The entrance to the kitchens, for instance, is hidden behind a painting of a bowl of fruit. Tickle the pear, and it will turn into a doorknob. Number 5. The common rooms. Each common room is unique. Slytherin, partly underwater beneath the lake. This makes the light inside dim and greenish. Ravenclaw, high in a tower with terraces, many windows and its own library. Hufflepuffed in the basement near the kitchens, yet surprisingly bright, warm and cozy. These details are barely explored in the films, yet they are what make each house's atmosphere truly distinctive. Number 6. Rules and safety. Hogwarts has clever ways of making sure students follow the rules. For example, if a boy tries to climb the stairs to the girls' dormitory, they instantly turn into a slide. Girls, however, can freely enter the boys' rooms. Number 7. The castle's regeneration. Hogwarts feels almost alive. It can repair itself after damage, though the process can take time. This was especially evident after the battle with the Death Eaters, when the castle slowly rebuilt itself. Number 8. Peeves, the poltergeist you never saw. Peeves was the living chaos of Hogwarts. He whistled rude tunes in the middle of class, stuffed keyholes with chewing gum, and dropped water balloons from the top of staircases. Argus Filch loathed him, chasing him through corridors while Peeves cackled. In Order of the Phoenix, when Dolores Umbridge tried to impose her rules, Peeves turned the school into a battlefield, unscrewing chandeliers, smashing vases, and blocking hallways. Fred and George gave him a final order before leaving. "Give from us, Peeves." He obeyed with delight. The films erase him entirely, losing a part of Hogwarts' personality. Without Peeves, the castle feels less alive, less unpredictable. In the books, he's not just a prankster, he's the school's mischief embodied, siding with students against tyranny, showing that Hogwarts itself refuses to be tamed. Number 9. House elves and the real kitchen. The feasts in the Great Hall do not appear by magic alone. Deep beneath the castle, more than 100 house elves work in a vast kitchen mirroring the hall above. Long wooden tables line the room, each one placed directly beneath its counterpart upstairs. When the food is ready, the elves send it up through enchanted hatches, and it appears before the students as if from thin air. In Goblet of Fire, Harry, Ron, and Hermione visited this hidden heart of Hogwarts, guided by Dobby, who beamed with pride at his spotless domain. The kitchen is always alive with motion. Enormous cauldrons bubble over roaring fires, knives chop without hands, and platters gleam in neat stacks. Here lives Winky, a house elf with a tragic story the films never told, once a servant of the Crouch family, now quietly working for the school. Dobby himself found a kind of freedom here, earning wages from Dumbledore yet still pouring his heart into the meals and care of the students. Hermione, shocked by their conditions, began SPEW, her campaign for elf rights, right in this very room. In the films, this world remains almost invisible. We see the food, but not the ones who make it. On the page, the Hogwarts kitchen is more than a workplace. It is a symbol of the hidden magic that keeps the castle running. Without the elves, the warmth and abundance of the Great Hall would vanish, and the school would lose one of its quietest, most loyal sources of care. Number 10. The Room of Requirement, more than a secret hideout. The Room of Requirement is not just a meeting spot for Dumbledore's army. It is the castle's most adaptable space, appearing only when truly needed. Walk past its hidden entrance 3 times, thinking hard about what you require, and the door will appear. In Order of the Phoenix, it became a perfect training hall for Harry and his friends, cushions for defense practice, shelves of spellbooks, even a dummy for stunning charms. It listens. It shapes itself to your need. But the room has a second life. Deep within is the Room of Hidden Things, a massive storage hall where centuries of forgotten or forbidden objects lie under dust. Broken furniture leans against ancient chests. Old cauldrons sit beside dangerous artifacts. It was here, in Half-Blood Prince, that Harry hid his potions textbook, the one filled with the Half-Blood Prince's notes, sliding it under a heavy cabinet and marking the spot with a bust and a wig. The room follows magical law. It cannot create food. As Dobby once explained, it is one of the 5 principal exceptions to Gamp's law of elemental transfiguration. If you wish for a feast, the room can give you a table, plates, and cutlery, but the food must come from somewhere else. This limitation is one of the few ways the castle reminds students that even magic has boundaries. In the films, the room is shown mainly as a battle training ground or a single, cluttered hall. The books reveal its scale and mystery. It is a living vault of Hogwarts history, holding secrets from students long gone. If you stand inside, surrounded by relics of 1,000 hidden stories, you understand. The Room of Requirement is as much a character as any professor, quietly watching, waiting to serve. Those who truly need it. Number 11. Studies beyond what the films show, subjects and exams. Hogwarts teaches more than just potions, transfiguration, and defense against the dark arts. Beyond the core subjects lie classes that the films barely touch. Arithmancy, taught by the precise and sharp-eyed Professor Vector, is a mix of numbers and magic, where equations can predict magical outcomes. Ancient runes demands patience and skill, decoding symbols carved centuries ago. Numerology ties numbers to fate, while Muggle studies examines the non-magical world with curious respect. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Hermione juggled so many classes she used a time turner, turning back hours each day just to be in 2 classrooms at once. The 5th year brings the OWLs, ordinary wizarding levels. They are grueling. Each subject has both written and practical parts. Harry remembers standing before the examiners, wand in hand, forced to conjure a Patronus under watchful eyes. Professor Tofty even praised him. "That's the first one I've ever seen." The pressure is immense. The great hall turns into a testing chamber, and the whisper of quills scratching parchment is the only sound. 2 years later come the NEWTs, nastily exhausting wizarding tests. These are the final measure for anyone hoping to enter advanced fields like aura work or magical law. Hermione thrived on the challenge, but even she admitted the weight of the exams was crushing. The panels of stern witches and wizards leave no room for error. In herbology, a wrong move could mean a venomous tentacular lashing out at your face. The films rush past these milestones, but in the books the exams shape the rhythm of Hogwarts life. They test not just magic, but focus, nerve, and endurance. They remind you that being a wizard or witch is not all flying on broomsticks. It's also long hours bent over books, ink-stained fingers, and the thrum of magic under pressure. Without them, half the true experience of Hogwarts is lost. Number 12. Secret Passages and the Marauders Map. Beneath Hogwarts lies a web of secret passages. Some are crumbling and unused. Others are still alive with the whisper of footsteps. The most famous runs from the humpbacked, one-eyed witch on the 3rd floor straight to Honeydukes in Hogsmeade. Harry first used it in Prisoner of Azkaban, slipping past Filch and out into the cold air of freedom. That tunnel wasn't on any school map, except one. The Marauders map is more than parchment. Created by Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot and Prongs, Lupin, Pettigrew, Sirius and James, it's a living chart of the castle. Not only the halls and rooms, but every person, named and moving, whether student, teacher or intruder. When Harry first saw Severus Snape walking the dungeons while he himself was hidden under the invisibility cloak, he understood its true power. "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good," he whispered, and the map bloomed to life. There are tunnels even the Marauders never fully explored. Peeves knows some. The Bloody Baron guards others with silence. Fred and George Weasley knew enough to smuggle sweets from Hogsmeade long before Harry. The danger was real. One passage under the Whomping Willow led directly to the Shrieking Shack, and only those who knew the trick to freezing the tree could use it without injury. The films show the map, but not the scale of its secrets. On screen, it's a tool for quick escapes. In the books, it's the beating heart of Hogwarts' hidden geography. Every moving dot tells a story, a late-night wanderer, a teacher on patrol, or a shadow where no one should be. It's not just a map. It's the castle's truth, laid bare for anyone bold enough to read it. Number 13. Sorting Hat Songs and History Lessons. Every September, before the sorting begins, the sorting hat clears its throat. Then it sings, not the same song twice. Each year brings a new tune, a new set of verses, part history, part warning. In Order of the Phoenix, its voice rang through the great hall. "Though I am just an ancient hat, they'll put me on your head. I'll tell you where you ought to be, but it's all for your own good." It spoke of Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, weaving their ideals into a single story. Sometimes the song carries a shadow. In Harry's 5th year, the hat warned of division. It urged the school to stand united. "Though we've been split these many years, let's now unite and end our fears." It wasn't just a melody. It was prophecy. The teachers listened. The students shifted uncomfortably. Even Dumbledore's eyes narrowed. The hat had seen something in the threads of the castle's history that the rest could not. This tradition is almost invisible in the films. We hear the hat speak briefly in Philosopher's Stone, but the yearly songs vanish from the screen. The result is a loss of the hat's true role, not just as a sorter of students, but as a keeper of Hogwarts' conscience. In the books, it is a voice older than any teacher, tied to the founding magic of the school, stepping forward once a year to remind everyone where they came from and where they might be headed. If you imagine sitting at the Gryffindor table, hearing the hat's verses echo off the enchanted ceiling, you can feel it. The laughter after a clever rhyme. The sudden silence when a darker line lands. It's the castle, speaking through cloth and thread, telling its children to remember their roots and brace for the storms ahead. That's more than ceremony. It's the soul of Hogwarts, singing once a year. Number 14, anti-apparition charms and allowed exceptions. Inside Hogwarts, apparition is impossible. The moment you try to vanish, the castle itself resists. Centuries ago, the founders wove powerful anti-apparition charms into the very stones. These spells are so strong that even someone like Professor McGonagall couldn't bypass them without the Headmaster's consent. "No one can apparate or disapparate inside the castle grounds," Hermione once reminded Harry and Ron, her voice firm. "Not even the teachers." The rule keeps the school secure. If an intruder could simply pop into the Great Hall, chaos would follow. There are rare exceptions. Only the Headmaster has the authority to lift the restriction. In Harry's 6th year, Dumbledore allowed ministry officials to come and teach apparition to the 6th years. Wilkie Twycross, a thin and nervous-looking instructor, set up lessons in the Great Hall after the charms were briefly lifted in that space. Even then, students were warned that the effect was temporary and tightly controlled. Once the lesson ended, the barrier returned instantly, like a lock, snapping shut. The system has saved lives. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Death Eaters couldn't bypass the gates or slip into the castle by apparition. They had to break the main defences first, giving the defenders time to prepare. The charms also stopped panicked students from trying to flee mid-fight, something that could have been deadly if they reappeared in an unsafe location. In that way, the magic of the castle acted both as a shield and a stern teacher. The films mention apparition and its side effects, splinching for example, but skip the deeper truth. Hogwarts is not just a school, it's a fortress wrapped in ancient magic. Those invisible walls mean that everyone inside, from a first year to the most skilled wizard, must respect the same rules. It's one of the few places in the wizarding world where power alone isn't enough to bend reality to your will. Number 15, House Ghosts, Keepers of Memory. In the quiet corridors of Hogwarts, when the candles burned low and the portraits whispered to each other in the half-darkness, there was a presence that did not belong to the living. Each house had its own guardian in the form of a ghost, and in the books, these spirits carried more weight than mere spectral decoration. They were, in many ways, the keepers of memory. Almost headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost, was more than a comic relief with his nearly severed neck. He was a bridge to centuries past, a witness to events no living professor could recall. In the first book, his cheerfully macabre appearance is paired with genuine help, such as when he advised Harry about the upcoming sorting feast and the history of Gryffindor House. He could recount stories of the castle's secret passages, past headmasters, and even the shifting politics of the wizarding world. His role was not merely to glide through walls, he was there to guide the young lions of Gryffindor with a mix of wit and quiet warning. The Bloody Baron, ghost of Slytherin House, was the embodiment of a darker history. His presence in the books was chilling, not simply because of the silver bloodstains on his robes, but because he carried a weight of guilt and tragedy. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Peeves, the poltergeist, normally untamable, instantly obeys the Baron's orders, a fact that even Filch, the caretaker, acknowledged with something like awe. The Baron's authority was not arbitrary. It came from an old and terrible story, one he shared only once in the entire series. His connection to Helena Ravenclaw, the Grey Lady, tied him to the very heart of the castle's founding. His fearsome reputation among students was matched only by the haunted look in his eyes, a reminder that even in death, some wounds never heal. The Grey Lady, Helena Ravenclaw, was perhaps the most mysterious of them all. For years in the books she drifted silently, her pale figure slipping between the shelves of the library or gliding through the cool stone hallways. She was the daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw, and she carried with her a secret that no one else could tell. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, it is she who reveals to Harry the location of her mother's lost diadem, explaining how she had stolen it in life and hidden it in a distant forest, only for it to be corrupted later by Tom Riddle. I sought to make myself cleverer, more important than my mother. I ran away with her diadem. she admitted, her voice as soft as a breath of wind. Without her confession, Harry would never have found the Horcrux, and the war against Voldemort might have ended very differently. Then there was the Fat Friar, the Hufflepuff ghost, whose presence in the books was warm and reassuring. Unlike the other ghosts, he had no tragic air or sharp tongue. His robes were ragged, his smile was generous, and he was known to offer comfort to first years overwhelmed by the grandeur of Hogwarts. He would slip them extra pieces of food from the feast, offer advice about avoiding Peeves, and even encourage struggling students when spells went awry. In the books, he also provided key insights into the Hufflepuff approach to magic: steady, loyal, and inclusive. When Harry and his friends needed to find the entrance to the kitchens, it was the friar who told them exactly how to tickle the pear in the still life painting. His kindness was part of the unseen fabric that held the house together. These ghosts were not simply decorations wandering the halls. They were living archives, custodians of lore that the current staff could not always access. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, nearly headless Nick was quick to tell Harry about the rules of the house, the history of the sorting, and even some of the more colourful Gryffindor victories. The ghosts offered context that textbooks could never provide. Their memories stretched back centuries, allowing them to speak about the time when the founders themselves walked the corridors. They were not merely witnesses, but participants in the evolving life of the castle. The absence of these details in the films stripped Hogwarts of some of its depth. In the visual medium, nearly headless Nick's most notable scene became his comic head flop at the Halloween feast. Yet, in the books, he also had a subplot about his failed admission to the Headless Hunt. This seemingly light-hearted storyline revealed his longing for acceptance, mirroring the very human struggles of the students he mentored. His disappointment, described in the book with the simple line, "I'm not completely headless," carried more emotional weight than the films allowed. This was the human side of a ghost, the part that made him relatable. The Bloody Baron's portrayal in the films was reduced to a silent, menacing presence. But in the books, the revelation of his past transformed him from a spectral enforcer into a tragic figure. He had loved Helena Ravenclaw, and in a moment of rage and desperation, he killed her. Then, horrified by his own act, took his own life. That history was the reason for Peeves's fear and for his authority within the castle. In removing that story, the films erased one of the most poignant examples of guilt and penance in the series, a reminder that some mistakes echo even beyond death. The Grey Lady's story in the books unfolded as a slow, deliberate reveal. Harry, desperate to find the final Horcrux, had to earn her trust. Her words, "I know what he did with it, I know where he hid it," were heavy with centuries of regret. In the films, her role was condensed into a brief, almost hurried conversation, losing the sense of guarded sorrow that made her confession so striking. The books allowed her to be more than a plot device. She was a character whose personal history was inextricably tied to the fate of the wizarding world. Number 16, the Headmaster's office, a treasury of magical history. The Headmaster's office at Hogwarts was never meant to be just another room within the castle. Hidden behind the stone gargoyle and accessible only by uttering a peculiar password, it held a weight of centuries, a layered atmosphere that carried whispers from every era of the school's existence. In the films, the space appears as a well-lit chamber where Harry Potter comes to speak with Albus Dumbledore, often in moments of urgency or danger. Yet in the books, the office is a place of living history, a museum of the magical world, and a silent witness to the decisions that shaped not just Hogwarts, but the entire wizarding community. Stepping inside meant stepping into the very memory of the castle itself. The walls were not bare stone, they were alive with portrait frames, each containing a former headmaster or headmistress, their faces shifting and their eyes alert. They were not simply paintings. These portraits could speak, argue, offer advice, and even travel to other portraits elsewhere in the magical world. Phineas Nigellus Black, the most reluctant and sardonic of them all, famously addressed Harry with thinly veiled contempt. Yet his role was crucial when Dumbledore needed messages carried between Hogwarts and the Order of the Phoenix. In Order of the Phoenix, it was Phineas's portrait that grudgingly assisted in delivering warnings. This detail, richly explored in the books, barely grazed the surface in the film adaptations, where the portraits were more silent decor than active participants in the school's fate. The power of these portraits was not limited to idle conversation. Dumbledore himself once remarked that the portraits of previous headmasters and headmistresses can give you counsel, underscoring their role as a council of accumulated wisdom. In moments of crisis, they became an invisible army of advisors able to recall policies, recount past dangers, and even remind the current headmaster of strategies employed centuries earlier. In the films, Harry stands alone with Dumbledore, the office a quiet background. But in the books, the space is charged with these ghostly presences, each frame a doorway into another time and perspective. Beyond the portraits, the artifacts within the office held an even deeper gravity. Most famous among them was the sword of Godric Gryffindor, which hung behind Dumbledore's desk in a glass case until it vanished to reappear in the hands of those worthy to wield it. Its silver blade was inlaid with rubies, gleaming even in the dim light. In Chamber of Secrets, Harry pulled it from the sorting hat in the very depths of the school, defeating the basilisk with its goblin-forged strength. The sword was more than a weapon, it was a direct link to one of the founders, a physical reminder that the ideals of bravery and courage had tangible power. The films showed the sword, but rarely lingered on the significance of it resting in that office, waiting for the next moment of destiny. Another of the room's marvels was the pensieve, a shallow stone basin carved with runes used to view and enter memories. Dumbledore used it as a tool for investigation and teaching, guiding Harry into the recollections of others so that the boy could better understand the threat posed by Lord Voldemort. In Half-Blood Prince, the pensieve became the stage for crucial revelations about Tom Riddle's past. The sensation of plunging into someone else's mind, seeing the world through their eyes, was unlike any other magic at Hogwarts. In the films, this device receives attention, but without the quiet reverence the books afford it. In text, the pensieve feels ancient, a relic that might have served dozens of headmasters before Dumbledore. It is in these details, the mixture of living portraits, historic weapons, and magical tools, that the office reveals itself as more than just a personal space. The desk was often piled with curious instruments, whirring and puffing little streams of smoke, their purposes never fully explained. One such device in Order of the Phoenix emitted tiny puffs shaped like animals, which scuttled across the desk before vanishing into thin air. These artifacts seem to have collected themselves there over the centuries, each one a fragment of magical experimentation, a record of the countless ways Hogwarts leaders tried to understand the world and guard the school. The films tend to present the headmaster's office as belonging to Dumbledore alone, a reflection of his personality. In the books, the opposite is true. The office belongs to Hogwarts itself, with Dumbledore merely its latest steward. Every portrait on the wall, every artifact on a shelf, is a voice from the past that lingers for the sake of the future. When Dolores Umbridge briefly occupied the role of headmistress, she found the room's history far less cooperative than she expected. The portraits, the artifacts, and even the very air resisted her presence. Hogwarts itself, through its history, seemed to decide who belonged there. There is a scene in Deathly Hallows when Harry enters the office after the Battle of Hogwarts, and the portraits erupt into applause, cheering the boy who had defended the school and ended Voldemort's reign. This moment crystallizes what the films do not fully convey. The headmaster's office is a living chorus, not a silent archive. Those paintings had observed centuries of students and crises, and they knew when the tide of history had turned. The applause was not just for Harry, but for the continuation of the school's legacy. physical arrangement of the room also speaks volumes. The spiraling staircase leading to the office suggests ascent, both literal and symbolic. Entering means rising to a place of authority and judgment, but also to a position surrounded by history's weight. The windows look out over the castle grounds, a reminder that the headmaster's duty is to watch over every stone and every student. In the films, the office's grandeur is mostly a backdrop for conversations. In the books, it is a vantage point from which Hogwarts itself can be surveyed and protected. Number 17, Astronomy Tower, a window to the magical universe. From the topmost point of Hogwarts Castle, the Astronomy Tower rises above every spire, arch and crenellation, holding its own solitary watch over the Scottish Highlands. It is a place few students speak of in detail, not because it is forbidden, but because its magic is subtle, quiet, and deeply personal. Unlike the flamboyance of charms or the danger of defense against the dark arts, astronomy demands patience. The tower is the highest accessible point in the school, and climbing its spiral staircase on a cold night, students carry star charts, telescopes, and blankets to protect against the biting wind. In the films, this place is reduced to a backdrop for tension and tragedy, but in the books, it is alive with the hum of learning and the sweep of the galaxy overhead. It is here that all students, regardless of their house or skill in magic, gather for their astronomy lessons. Professor Aurora Sinistra presides over these sessions, her presence rarely noted outside the classroom, yet her work is vital. J.K. Rowling only gives us glimpses of her, a tall black witch in emerald green robes, but her subject connects every young witch and wizard to a much older form of magic, the magic of the heavens themselves. As the night deepens, her instructions carry over the wind, identify Orion, track Jupiter's position, chart the movements of Mars. Astronomy is the oldest magic of all, she reminds them, a phrase not in the films, but one that lingers in the reader's mind. The importance of the Astronomy Tower is underscored by the fact that astronomy is the only subject all students are required to take for the first 5 years. Unlike potions or transfiguration, which can be dropped after OWL, the study of the stars is considered foundational. It is not just about learning the constellations, it is about understanding how magical energies ebb and flow with celestial cycles. Professor Sinistra teaches them that planetary alignments can influence spell potency and that eclipses are moments of great magical volatility. None of this is shown on screen, where the tower is little more than a silent witness to Dumbledore's fall. During one particularly clear night in Harry's 3rd year, the class gathered around brass telescopes to watch a rare event, the appearance of the comet Hale-Bopp, bright enough to cast shadows on the stone floor of the observation platform. Sinistra explained how certain comets were once thought to foretell great change in the wizarding world, though in reality their influence was more symbolic than literal. Hermione Granger meticulously recorded every observation, sketching the tale's arc with her quill, while Ron complained about freezing fingers. In the films there is no trace of this quiet moment, yet in the book such scenes give Hogwarts its depth. The feeling that it is a place where real education happens between the crises. Astronomy at Hogwarts is not merely about looking upward. It is about recording, measuring, and interpreting. Students use enchanted telescopes that adjust automatically to the rotation of the Earth and star charts that shimmer with faint silver ink under starlight. The work is painstaking. Each measurement must be correct to the degree, as Professor Sinistra warns that even a small error can throw off an entire reading. It is here, on the frost-slicked stones of the Astronomy Tower, that students learn patience in magic, an art less glamorous than dueling, but equally vital. Harry once noted the strangeness of feeling both so small beneath the night sky and so connected to the vast, hidden patterns above. The tower is also a place where the lines between magic and science blur. In a rare passage from Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix we read, they had to work out the precise positions of the planets on the chart they had been given, using the telescopes to confirm their calculations. This meticulous process mirrors Muggle astronomy, yet it is infused with wizarding interpretation. Mars's red light might be seen as a sign of conflict, or Venus's brilliance as an omen of love. The films never hint at this delicate balance between objective measurement and magical meaning. There is a quiet camaraderie in these lessons. Houses mingle without rivalry, united by the cold and the shared task. Even Draco Malfoy, usually quick to sneer, works in silence during these sessions, his pale hands steadying the telescope. Neville Longbottom, often clumsy in other classes, has a knack for spotting faint constellations. These subtler shades of character development, revealed under the stars, are invisible in the cinematic version, where the tower exists in isolation from the school's daily life. It is also a place where the natural world asserts itself over magic. No spell can push away the chill entirely, and no charm can make clouds vanish on command. If the night is overcast, lessons are postponed. If a storm breaks, students huddle indoors with parchment and charts, working by candlelight. The unpredictability of the skies reminds them that magic operates within the laws of nature, not above it. Harry often found these moments strangely grounding, a contrast to the chaos that usually surrounded him. The astronomy tower's role in examinations is another detail lost in adaptation. In Harry's 5th year, the OWL astronomy exam takes place there at midnight, the candidates working under strict silence to plot the positions of stars and planets. In the books, this scene gains dramatic tension when the students witness Professor McGonagall being attacked by ministry officials in the courtyard below. This blend of academic focus and real-world danger captures the essence of Hogwarts life. Learning does not pause for politics or peril. The films omit the exam entirely, erasing the sense that astronomy is as much a part of the Hogwarts curriculum as any defensive spell. Number 18, Owlpost, Magical Logistics. The Owlery stood high in one of Hogwarts' towers, a place the films barely brushed upon, but which in truth was a beating heart of the school's connection to the outside world. The air was always filled with the rustle of wings, the faint cooing of contented owls, and the smell of straw and feathers. Snow often drifted in through the open, unglazed windows, and the perches rose like a forest of poles and beams, each occupied by a watchful bird. In the books, Harry's first real visit there in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban paints it vividly. It was a circular stone room, rather cold and without windows, the walls punctuated by perches on which perched hundreds of owls. This description alone suggests a place far larger and busier than the handful of quick glimpses in the films. It was not just a location, it was a hub, a magical post office with a system so flawless that no wizarding postal service in the Muggle world could dream of matching it. Each owl in the Owlery had its own master, or at least a strong sense of loyalty to one, and it was part of their magic that they could find any recipient, no matter where in the world that person might be. Hedwig's flights to deliver letters to Sirius Black are a perfect example. Sirius was in hiding, moving across different locations, yet Hedwig found him without fail. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry marvels at this uncanny ability when Hedwig returns from a distant journey. Hedwig gave him an affectionate nip as she landed on his shoulder, her amber eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of a completed task. That satisfaction came from a kind of magic that went unremarked upon in the films, an ancient enchantment woven into wizarding owls over centuries of coexistence. The Owlery was not merely functional, it was also a place of secrets. Students often used it under the cover of night, slipping up the cold, spiraling staircase with letters hidden in their robes. The stone floor was always littered with owl droppings, the remains of small rodents, and scraps of parchment. Ron Weasley once trudged up there in Order of the Phoenix to send a letter to Percy, an act tinged with tension after their family quarrels. Hermione, too, was known to send letters discreetly when she needed information beyond the castle walls. Sometimes the letters themselves were not entirely innocent. Fred and George Weasley once used Owlpost to smuggle out products from Weasley's Wizard Wheezes even before they officially left school, slipping them into packages to eager customers. There was also the matter of how owls navigated such great distances and conditions. The films give no sense of the training, instinct, and enchantments that allowed them to traverse storms, oceans, and enemy territory. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry worries for Hedwig's safety when she's delayed in returning from a delivery to France, but she arrives unharmed, a testament to the magical resilience of the species. It's implied in the books that the magic is not just in the birds, but in the very act of posting. Once the message is tied to an owl's leg, the intent of the sender and the bond with the recipient guide the delivery as surely as a compass points north. The sheer number of owls in Hogwarts meant that every hour of the day messages were coming and going. Imagine dozens of them launching from the tower at dawn, wings beating against the morning air, each arrowing toward a different part of the world. The noise of their return in the evenings would be a constant background hum to castle life. These birds carried more than letters. Packages arrived with birthday gifts, books from Diagon Alley, ingredients from distant apothecaries, and occasionally items less benign. In Order of the Phoenix, Mundungus Fletcher sends Harry a suspicious parcel via Owlpost, which Molly Weasley confiscates, warning of dangerous contents. Such moments reveal that the owlery was a potential smuggling route, a risk that the films never hint at. Hogsmeade's proximity to Hogwarts meant that some letters never travelled far, but others went across continents. The owls knew no borders, passing over Muggle cities and remote wizarding enclaves alike. When Sirius was in hiding near the tropics, Harry's letters reached him just as surely as if he had been in the next village. This ability was taken for granted in the wizarding world, but would have been revolutionary in ours. Even the Ministry of Magic relied on owls for urgent communications. In Order of the Phoenix, the flurry of warning letters sent to Harry after the Dementor attack is a scene that works only if one understands the reliability and speed of this magical network. Life in the owlery had its own rhythms. Owls slept during the day unless called upon, their heads tucked into their feathers. At night, the tower came alive with soft hoots, the shuffle of talons on wood, and the occasional snap of a beak. Care of the owls was shared by the gamekeeper and students. It was understood that if you used an owl regularly, you made sure it was fed and rested. Harry always treated Hedwig with care, offering her treats and allowing her to rest after long journeys. In contrast, some students were less thoughtful, a fact that occasionally sparked small conflicts in the common rooms. There were also unspoken rules about privacy in the owlery. While it was a public space, one did not read another's letters or inspect the contents of their packages, yet the temptation was always there. Draco Malfoy was suspected more than once of tampering with deliveries, though nothing was proven. In Half-Blood Prince, there is a mention of packages going mysteriously missing, which Filch investigated without success. Such incidents fed the notion that the owlery was not entirely secure, though it was still the fastest and most reliable way to communicate. For first-year students, their initial visit to the owlery could be magical and intimidating. The sight of so many owls each turning their head to watch the newcomer was overwhelming. Choosing a school owl for the first time was a small rite of passage. Harry's earliest experiences in Philosopher's Stone with the school's tawny owl felt formal compared to the bond he later shared with Hedwig. The school owls were dependable but impersonal, whereas a personal owl could sense moods, anticipate needs, and even refuse to deliver a letter if it thought it unwise. There is also a small but telling detail in Goblet of Fire when the Weasley family sends Harry a package containing Molly's homemade fudge. The owl arrives exhausted, feathers ruffled, and collapses into its perch. This shows that while owls are magical, they still feel the strain of long journeys, and the sender's choice of owl could make the difference between a timely delivery and a delayed one. Such care for the bird's well-being that it was part of wizarding etiquette, something the films never touch upon. The owlery had a romantic reputation among some students. It was secluded, often empty during the day, and far from the noise of the main castle. Stories circulated about couples meeting there in secret, sending coded letters or small gifts. Ginny Weasley, for instance, was rumoured to have sent anonymous notes during her early years, though whether they ever reached their intended recipient was left to speculation. These small human dramas added another layer to the owlery's history, turning it into a place of both public service and private emotion. During times of war, the owlery took on an even greater significance. In the Second Wizarding War, owls carried coded messages between members of the Order of the Phoenix, sometimes risking interception by Death Eaters. Protective charms and decoy letters became common. The films hint at the danger in passing but never convey the full strategic role the owlery played. It was not merely a quaint relic of wizarding tradition, but a vital intelligence link in a time of crisis. One of the most poignant moments involving the owlery in the books is when Hedwig delivers Harry's letter to Sirius, only to be sent back almost immediately with a short reply urging caution. "Keep your head down and your eyes open," the note reads, in Order of the Phoenix. The brevity of the message, contrasted with the effort of the delivery, underscores how every flight from the owlery was an act of trust and, in some cases, courage. The owlery was also an equalizer of sorts in a school divided by house rivalries. Gryffindors, Slytherins, Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs all used the same tower, often side by side. On occasion, grudges softened there. Two students might find themselves waiting for their respective owls and end up in an unexpected conversation. This quiet mingling was one of the few times in a school year when the walls between houses seemed thinner. Even after years at Hogwarts, the owlery could still surprise its visitors. New owls would arrive from time to time, joining the ranks, each with their own quirks. Some were swift but surly, others slow but affectionate. Each bird was more than just a messenger. They were companions, silent witnesses to the unfolding stories of the students and the wider wizarding world. The films, in choosing to focus on grand battles and dazzling spells, left this quiet yet indispensable part of Hogwarts life largely unseen. But in the books it remains one of the school's most intricate and enduring pieces of magical logistics, a place where feathers and parchment carried news, hope, and sometimes heartbreak across any distance. Number 19, The Hospital Wing and Madame Pomfrey's Skill. The hospital wing of Hogwarts was more than a quiet room with white sheets and the faint smell of potion ingredients. In the books it was a place of tension, whispered worries, and the soft but firm footsteps of Madame Poppy Pomfrey, the matron who could repair a shattered bone or purge a dangerous poison with the same efficiency as brewing a cup of tea. The films only gave us glimpses, brief scenes where Harry woke up after a dramatic event or when a Quidditch injury was patched up in seconds. But the truth was, in the written story, the hospital wing often stood as the barrier between calamity and recovery, and Madame Pomfrey was not just a healer, but a quiet guardian of the school's survival. Her skill extended far beyond simple first aid. She could mend bones overnight, though in Harry's second year, when Gilderoy Lockhart disastrously removed all the bones from his arm instead of fixing the break, Madame Pomfrey's patience was tested to its limits. "You will be able to go in the morning," she told him sharply in Chamber of Secrets. "I don't know what you've been doing to yourself. Bone regrowth is a nasty business." The Skeeler Grow she administered tasted like a mixture of burnt wood and acid, and Harry had to endure the excruciating process of growing an entire armful of bones from scratch. The films condensed this scene into a quick shot, robbing it of the tense hours Harry spent in bed, clenching his teeth while the matron checked his temperature and made sure no side effects appeared. Madame Pomfrey was not just a dispenser of potions, she was a battlefield medic in a castle constantly under threat. During Harry's third year, when he was attacked by Dementors during a Quidditch match, it was Pomfrey who revived him in the hospital wing, ensuring he was kept under blankets with a steady supply of chocolate, the antidote to the soul-chilling despair Dementors caused. "You gave us quite a scare," she told him in Prisoner of Azkaban, bustling around with an efficiency that suggested she'd handled far worse than fainting. In the films, we barely see her during this episode. Though in the books her watchfulness over Harry's recovery was almost motherly, even as she scolded him for flying in such dreadful weather. Perhaps one of the most telling examples of her importance came in the aftermath of the Triwizard Tournament's second task. After Harry had rescued Ron, Hermione, Gabrielle, and Fleur from the depths of the Black Lake, the hospital wing became a ward for the chilled and half-conscious champions and hostages. Madame Pomfrey administered steaming potions to drive the cold from their bones, checking pulse after pulse, her face set in professional concentration. She didn't care that they had just been part of a dangerous international competition. They were children in her eyes, and the fact that the staff allowed them into such peril seemed to trouble her deeply. Madame Pomfrey's presence also underscored the unspoken truth that Hogwarts was not a safe school by Muggle standards. In Harry's fourth year, after the Quidditch World Cup chaos and the unexpected arrival of the Triwizard Tournament, the hospital wing became a revolving door for students injured in magical accidents. When Fred and George tested their Tung-Tung toffees on Dudley, Madame Pomfrey was the one who would have had to deal with similar cases in school. Though not shown in the films, her skill at reversing bizarre magical mishaps was the glue that kept day-to-day school life functioning. Her expertise wasn't limited to minor cases. In Order of the Phoenix, after Arthur Weasley's near-fatal attack by Nagini, he was brought to St. Mungo's, but when the students faced dangerous injuries at Hogwarts, Pomfrey handled them without hesitation. She healed Weasley twins' fireworks burns, counteracted jinxes from misfired spells, and even treated cursed wounds that resisted ordinary magic. Her range of medical knowledge was staggering, and she often worked alone, without a staff, a fact rarely acknowledged in the films. The hospital wing also played a role in moments of deep emotional impact. After the attack on Dumbledore's army members at the Ministry of Magic, the injured students were tended by Madame Pomfrey. In Half-Blood Prince, when Katie Bell was cursed by a necklace in Hogsmeade, Pomfrey stabilized her before sending her to St. Mungo's. The way she hovered over the unconscious girl, checking every magical signature for signs of lingering curses, spoke to the gravity of her work. The films briefly showed Katie's plight, but skipped over the meticulous process of diagnosis and magical healing that J.K. Rowling described in the book. One of the most harrowing moments in the books that barely made it to the films was after Dumbledore's death. The hospital wing became a silent corridor of grief. Students wounded during the skirmish with Death Eaters were laid out on the beds, and Pomfrey moved from one to another, her face tight with fatigue, but her hands never trembling. She patched up deep gashes, counteracted dark curses, and even managed to save Bill Weasley after Fenrir Greyback's attack. Though she couldn't reverse the werewolf's bite, she prevented worse damage, an achievement few could manage against such savage magic. Pomfrey's role in the Battle of Hogwarts was monumental. In Deathly Hallows, the hospital wing overflowed with the wounded and dying. She worked alongside other healers, including volunteer members of the Order of the Phoenix, to tend to students, teachers, and even some injured creatures. The chaos of that night was unimaginable, limbs shattered, eyes cursed shut, blood soaking the sheets, but she kept working, issuing brisk orders and refusing to stop until the last battle cries faded. In the films, she is almost absent from this sequence, erasing her from one of the most important nights in Hogwarts history. The way students spoke of her in the books also revealed her character. She was stern, quick to scold recklessness, but fiercely protective. Harry, Ron, and Hermione often left the hospital wing with not just healed injuries, but the distinct sense they'd been told off by a figure who cared enough to be angry at their foolishness. When Ron was poisoned in Half-Blood Prince, She was the one to oversee his recovery after Slughorn's quick antidote. She fussed over his strength, adjusted his blankets, and warned Harry that recklessness and bravery are not the same thing. Her relationship with the staff was also marked by a kind of mutual respect. McGonagall trusted her implicitly, and even Dumbledore acknowledged her abilities without question. She was not a teacher, but her authority in matters of health was absolute. No one, not even the headmaster, overruled her decisions about whether a student was fit to leave the hospital wing. In this, she acted almost as a separate pillar of Hogwarts governance, her word final in matters of safety. One of the subtler aspects the films ignored was how the hospital wing reflected the state of the school itself. In peaceful times it was empty, save for the occasional minor injury. During darker years it filled with victims of curses, accidents, and magical creatures. The very atmosphere of the ward, quiet or tense, was a barometer for Hogwarts' health as a whole. Madame Pomfrey, at its centre, was both a witness and a participant in the school's history, tending to those who would later play pivotal roles in the war against Voldemort. Even small details in the book showed her depth. She had a precise way of laying out bandages, a habit of checking the magical integrity of a wound twice before sealing it, and a sharp memory for each patient's medical history. When Harry returned after one of his many misadventures, she didn't need to ask what had happened. She could often deduce the cause of injury from the type of curse residue or the smell of lingering potion fumes. This mastery made her a figure of both awe and mild fear among the students. Her absence in the films was not just a loss of a secondary character, but a loss of an essential part of Hogwarts' identity. The hospital wing and Madame Pomfrey's unwavering competence grounded the magical chaos of the school in a layer of realism. Magic was dangerous, and without her the body count would have been far higher. The books understood that danger and gave her the space to work, to heal, and to scold. The films, by trimming her role, left us with a Hogwarts that seemed far less perilous and far less human. Number 20, the Great Hall and its enchanted ceiling. The enchanted ceiling of the Great Hall in Hogwarts is one of those details that truly embodies the magic of J.K. Rowling's world. Yet in the films it flickers by as a passing visual without the weight and wonder it receives in the books. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Rowling describes it with deliberate beauty. The ceiling was too high to make out, and it was lit by thousands and thousands of candles floating in mid-air over 4 long tables where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and goblets. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers were sitting. The ceiling was bewitched to look like the night sky outside. It was not merely a clever illusion. It was a living, reactive piece of the castle, designed to reflect the very mood of the weather and the world beyond the stone walls. What the films failed to communicate is the origin of this marvel. According to Rowling's lore, the charm that made the ceiling a mirror to the sky was the work of Helga Hufflepuff herself. This often overlooked founder, remembered for her warmth and inclusivity, also had a mastery of enchantments that blended beauty with utility. The Great Hall's ceiling was not a random flourish. It was conceived as a way to bring the outside world into the heart of the school, allowing young witches and wizards, many of whom might feel homesick, to see the familiar cycle of day and night, the change of seasons, and the shifting moods of the sky. This connection between the students and the natural world was meant to root them in reality, even as they trained in the fantastical. In the books, the ceiling often becomes a silent storyteller, marking the passage of time and the turning of emotions. On stormy evenings, black clouds rumble silently above the long tables, forked with flashes of lightning. On clear winter nights, the stars shine sharp and bright against velvet darkness, making the students' breath catch as they enter the hall for supper. During moments of celebration, the enchantment is bent for theatrical effect. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, When the Yule Ball transforms the Great Hall into a place of glittering frost and icicles, the ceiling becomes a canopy of shimmering silver starlight though the hall has been transported to a wintry wonderland under an eternal night. The magic of the ceiling is described in the books with the kind of intimate familiarity that makes the reader feel the hall's presence as a character in its own right. Hermione Granger once points out in Philosopher's Stone that she read about the enchantment in Hogwarts, a history, remarking on how the spell was so powerful that it had endured unchanged for centuries. The films, by contrast, offer a beautiful image without ever explaining the centuries-old magic behind it. As a result, movie-only viewers lose the knowledge that they are witnessing one of the school's oldest, most enduring enchantments, created by a founder whose name they may not even connect to this extraordinary spell. There are moments in the books when the ceiling becomes more than just a mirror of the weather. It becomes a silent participant in the narrative. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, when the school is shrouded in fear after several petrifications, the enchanted sky above the students is often described as gloomy, with heavy grey clouds mirroring the tension and unease in the air. Even when the weather outside is clear, the hall seems dimmer, as though the enchantment itself senses the mood of the school. This subtle, atmospheric storytelling is absent from the films, where the ceiling's depiction remains largely neutral, a passive backdrop rather than an emotional mirror. One of the most poignant examples of the ceiling's role in the books comes during the memorial feast in Half-Blood Prince. The Great Hall is heavy with grief after the death of Albus Dumbledore. The enchanted sky is described as black and starless, a blank canvas of mourning that makes the hall feel more like a cathedral than a school dining room. The image is haunting, and it transforms the ceiling into a symbol of collective loss. Such use of the enchantment deepens the emotional resonance of the scene in a way the films never fully capture. The magic of the ceiling also plays a role in building Hogwarts' sense of permanence. Students come and go, decades pass, wars rage and subside, but the Great Hall remains, its ceiling faithfully reflecting the outside sky. In a world where portraits move, staircases shift, and ghosts drift through walls, the stability of that enchanted view gives the castle a heartbeat that the films only hint at. It tells the reader, no matter what happens, the Great Hall will always be there, under its eternal sky. Helga Hufflepuff's choice to create such a spell was not purely decorative. According to Rowling's extended lore, she believed that students should feel connected to the rhythms of nature, even while buried in their studies and spells. The moving sky above the Great Hall reminded them of the larger world beyond Hogwarts' protective magic, a constant reminder that magic and the natural order could coexist in harmony. This philosophy fits Hufflepuff's character, practical, nurturing, and focused on community. By reflecting the true sky, she gave her students a grounding in reality even as they learned to shape it. There were times, too, when the ceiling's enchantment was used to enhance festivities. During the Halloween feasts described in the books, the ceiling would become a swirling tempest of ghostly clouds, shot through with orange light from thousands of floating pumpkins. During Christmas, it might soften into a gentle snowfall, flakes melting before they touched the golden plates below. In Order of the Phoenix, when Harry returns for his 5th year, the ceiling is at its most dramatic during the start-of-term feast, with lightning streaking across a stormy expanse echoing the turbulent year to come. In Philosopher's Stone, Rowling makes an interesting detail clear. The enchantment is not a simple glamour, but a reflection of the real sky above the castle. This is why Harry, in his first moments inside the hall, is struck by the way it looks exactly like the night outside, because it is the night outside, just seen through a magical lens. The books even hint that the ceiling can be disrupted or dimmed if the enchantment is tampered with, though no scene ever fully explores this possibility. This layer of magical realism reinforces the idea that Hogwarts itself is a living, breathing entity. The sensory detail in the books makes the ceiling more than a background element. It is almost a sensory link to the outside world. The smell of rain sometimes drifts into the hall when storm clouds roil above. The soft glow of a rising sun spreads warmth across the tables during early breakfasts. Rowling's descriptions make it easy to imagine looking up from a goblet of pumpkin juice to see a shooting star trace its way across the enchanted expanse, a private moment of beauty unnoticed by most of the hundreds of students chatting and laughing below. By not explaining the enchantment, the films unintentionally strip the Great Hall of a layer of meaning. In the cinematic version, the ceiling is impressive but purely ornamental, its magic unexplained. Viewers are given no reason to see it as anything more than an atmospheric trick. In the books, however, knowing that it is centuries-old magic designed by a founder changes the way one sees it. Every flicker of lightning, every soft blush of dawn, every scattering of clouds feels like a conversation between the past and the present. It is worth noting that the enchantment of the Great Hall's ceiling is one of the few pieces of magic in Hogwarts that serves both a practical and an emotional purpose. It lights the hall without harsh torches, sets the tone for meals and celebrations, and even reflects the collective mood of the school. It is magic as architecture, magic as art, magic as a shared experience. This blending of form and function is part of what makes Hogwarts feel so believable in the books, a place where magic shapes daily life in subtle, beautiful ways. The ceiling also reinforces one of the themes running through the Harry Potter series, the interplay between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Eating a meal is ordinary, doing so under a sky full of stars while indoors is extraordinary. The ceiling doesn't replace reality, it reframes it, inviting the students to see the familiar with new eyes. That lesson, hidden in plain sight, is one of Hufflepuff's quiet gifts to every generation that passes beneath her enchanted sky. And so, while the films give us fleeting glimpses of its beauty, the books allow us to live under it, to feel the magic in our bones. The ceiling is more than decoration. It is the Great Hall's soul, an unblinking witness to centuries of Hogwarts history. From the sorting of the first nervous first years to the final battle that shakes its walls, it has been there, watching, reflecting, remembering. Without the knowledge of its enchantment and its history, one might simply look up and see a beautiful illusion. With it, one sees a living piece of the school's heart and a silent legacy of Helga Hufflepuff that endures as long as Hogwarts itself. Number 21, Hogsmeade, a privilege for older students. In the world of Hogwarts, there exists a privilege so coveted by young witches and wizards that it becomes a kind of milestone in their magical education. The films barely touch on it, showing only glimpses, but in the books it holds an entire layer of atmosphere and tradition. This privilege is the right, starting from the 3rd year, to visit Hogsmeade, the only all-wizarding village in Britain. It is a place where the cobblestone streets seem to hum with enchantments, where centuries-old buildings lean toward each other as if sharing secrets, and where the air is always scented with a mixture of roasted nuts, magical brews, and the sweetness of honeydukes. The rule was simple, yet strict. No one under 3rd year was allowed, and even then, only with a signed permission slip from a parent or guardian. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Professor McGonagall reminds the students, you will need a signed permission slip from your parent or guardian to visit Hogsmeade. This formality carried with it a strange sense of importance, as though the slip was not just a piece of parchment, but a ticket to a larger world beyond the castle walls. Hogsmeade in the films is shown briefly, almost like a backdrop, a snowy street here, a warm pub there, but the books paint it as a living, breathing village with traditions passed down through generations of Hogwarts students. It is the place where Fred and George Weasley perfected their early business instincts by smuggling nose-biting teacups from Zonko's joke shop back into the castle. It is where Hermione would occasionally scold Ron for spending too much on sweets, while Ron would insist that the peppermint toads were essential supplies. In the pages of the novels, Hogsmeade is not just a destination, it is a seasonal ritual. Third years would anticipate the first scheduled weekend visit as much as they anticipated the Yule Ball or Quidditch matches. Honeydukes, the most glorious sweet shop in the world, was perhaps the crown jewel for many students. Its shelves were stacked high with chocolate frogs, fizzing Whizbees, and boxes of Bertie Bott's every flavour beans. The shop smelled so strongly of sugar and chocolate that one could feel dizzy upon entering. In the books, Harry describes the sight of great barrels of every flavour beans, all the colours of the rainbow, a large range of chocolate bars, enormous choco balls, creamy fudge, coconut ice. The films show a few interiors of Honeydukes, but they never linger long enough for the viewer to feel the overwhelming, almost dizzying indulgence the books convey. The reality on the page is that for many Hogwarts students, Honeydukes was as much a part of their education as the library, teaching them the value of saving pocket money and the joy of spending it all in one afternoon. The Three Broomsticks, run by the warm yet sharp Madame Rosmerta, offered a different kind of welcome. The pub was a refuge from the cold, with a fire always crackling in the hearth and the smell of butterbeer filling the air. In the books, Harry describes the butterbeer as a little bit like less sickly butterscotch, and it became a signature taste of Hogsmeade visits. The films capture the drink's golden froth, but they omit the cosy, intimate moments when students would huddle around a table, warming their hands on mugs while gossiping about Quidditch or the latest rumours about the Triwizard Tournament. For Harry, the Three Broomsticks was also a place of unexpected revelations, such as overhearing Cornelius Fudge, Minerva McGonagall, and Hagrid discussing Sirius Black within earshot, a pivotal moment in Prisoner of Azkaban. Zonko's joke shop was a chaotic wonderland that the films barely acknowledge. In the books, Zonko's is filled with dung bombs, hiccup sweets, and stink pellets, along with clever magical pranks that inspired Fred and George's later business empire. The shop buzzed with energy, its walls lined with gadgets designed to annoy, surprise, and entertain. Students would leave with pockets stuffed full of joke items, and the scent of gunpowder and sugar clung to their robes long after they returned to the castle. This element of mischief is a vital part of Hogsmeade's charm that the visual adaptations chose to leave in the shadows. Hogsmeade was also home to Dervish and Banges, a shop selling and repairing magical instruments. Though less glamorous than Honeydukes or Zonko's, it was essential for students with a more practical mindset. Hermione once mentioned buying a sneakerscope there, a small glass spinning top that lit up when someone untrustworthy was nearby. The films do not give this shop a moment of screen time, yet in the books it quietly supports the daily needs of the wizarding community, reinforcing the idea that Hogsmeade is not just a tourist attraction for Hogwarts students, but a functional village with its own economy. There is also the darker side of Hogsmeade, hinted at in the snow-covered silhouette of the Shrieking Shack. The locals called it the most haunted building in Britain, and though the films use it primarily as the setting for the climactic confrontation in Prisoner of Azkaban, the books build an entire legend around it. Even the bravest aren't willing to go inside, Ron says, and the rumour persisted for decades. Students dared each other to approach it, often retreating in exaggerated terror before reaching the front door. What the films barely explain is that the Shrieking Shack was built specifically to contain Remus Lupin during his transformations into a werewolf, a fact only revealed to Harry during one tense, stormy night. In the novels, the exclusivity of Hogsmeade visits added a layer of longing for younger students. First and second years would watch the older students leave the castle bundled in scarves and gloves, chattering excitedly as they crossed the grounds toward the village. The longing was particularly sharp for Harry, who in his third year was unable to get his permission slip signed by Uncle Vernon. This led to some of the most memorable secret adventures in the series, as Harry discovered hidden passages leading from the castle to Hogsmeade. Fred and George, ever resourceful, gifted him the Marauders map, saying, "It's a map of Hogwarts, and it's enchanted. It shows you everyone in the castle." One of those passages led straight into the cellar of honeydukes, bypassing the need for adult permission entirely. The films reduce these secret excursions to brief sequences, but in the books they carry a distinct thrill of rebellion. Harry's first illicit visit through the one-eyed witch passageway is described in rich detail. The narrow, low tunnel, the miles of underground walking, the moment he emerges into the warmth and light of the sweet shop. These clandestine trips allowed Harry to join his friends in the village and created some of the most intimate group scenes between him, Ron, and Hermione, moments of normalcy in a life otherwise filled with danger. Seasonality played a large role in Hogsmeade's charm. The books describe springtime visits when the sun warmed the cobblestones and students carried ice cream from a small stand run by Florian Fortescue, as well as autumn weekends when the first snowflakes fell and the village turned into a postcard-perfect winter wonderland. The films tend to depict it always under snow, erasing the changing moods and rhythms of the village life that the books make so vivid. Hogsmeade was also the backdrop for significant plot moments that the films either compressed or omitted. In Order of the Phoenix, for example, Harry has a tense meeting with Rita Skeeter and Hermione at the Three Broomsticks to discuss telling his side of the story about Voldemort's return. In Half-Blood Prince, a Hogsmeade trip ends in horror when Katie Bell touches a cursed necklace in the snowy street. These moments root the village in the central narrative, making it more than a decorative setting. The atmosphere of Hogsmeade also reflects the broader political climate in the wizarding world. In later books, especially during the events of Deathly Hallows, the once welcoming streets are patrolled by Death Eaters, and shops close their doors in fear. Aberforth Dumbledore's Hogshead Inn becomes a clandestine meeting point for members of Dumbledore's army, a far cry from the lively butterbeer gatherings of earlier years. The films touch on this shift briefly, but the novels immerse the reader in the change, letting the village's transformation mirror the growing darkness of the war. Hogsmeade had its own traditions that bound it to Hogwarts life. Couples would often stroll arm in arm through the village on chilly afternoons, sharing a single butterbeer. Friends would pool their coins to buy a box of rare sweets to split back in the common room. The journey itself, walking down the long sloping path from the castle gates, seeing the first chimneys appear in the distance, was part of the magic. The films give us the village as a static location, but the books present it as a living memory factory for every student lucky enough to walk its streets. Perhaps the greatest difference between page and screen is the sense of community Hogsmeade fosters. In the novels, it is a meeting place where Hogwarts students brush shoulders with older witches and wizards, hear snippets of conversation about ministry politics, or see magical innovations in the shop windows. These encounters expanded their understanding of the wizarding world beyond the castle, giving them a glimpse of the lives they might lead after graduation. This nuance is largely absent in the films, which keep the focus tightly on the central trio's storyline. Hogsmeade's privilege for third years and above is more than just a rule. It is a rite of passage. It marks a stage in a Hogwarts student's life when they are trusted to step beyond the safety of the castle, to explore, to spend their own money, to make choices about where to go and what to do. The films may have shown only fragments of its streets, but the books give us the whole village with its sweet shops, pubs, joke stores and haunted houses, each with its own stories, each a part of the tapestry that makes Hogsmeade not just a location, but a cherished chapter in every Hogwarts student's education. Number 22, Trophy and Memory Halls. Hidden away in the winding corridors of Hogwarts, far from the noise of the Great Hall and the busy classrooms, lies a place that few students ever visit, unless they have a reason. The Trophy and Memorial Hall is not a classroom nor a common room, yet it carries within its glass cases and polished plaques the weight of centuries of Hogwarts history. The air there is cooler, touched by the faint scent of wood polish and dust that settles between the letters of names carved hundreds of years ago. This is the place where the school remembers its triumphs, its competitions, its most talented students, and sometimes the moments it would rather forget. The hall is lined with tall glass cabinets that rise nearly to the vaulted ceiling. Each cabinet holds an array of gleaming cups, some so polished they still reflect light, as if freshly awarded, others dulled with age, their inscriptions nearly illegible from centuries of handling. One of the most prominent displays is the Quidditch Cup cabinet, where each year's winning house is etched in brass, the years stretching back further than any living student could imagine. A small brass plate under the cup of 1973 reads James Potter, Gryffindor Seeker, a reminder of a boy whose name would one day mean much more than a school victory. Opposite the Quidditch trophies is a long wall of wooden panels, dark with age, engraved with the names of every head boy and head girl since the school's founding. The letters are precise and evenly spaced, each name and year glowing faintly in the dim light from the floating candles above. In the 1945 panel, just beside a row of unfamiliar names, one stands out in the crisp golden lettering, Tom Riddle, Head Boy, Slytherin. Students who pause long enough here often feel a strange shiver, for they know what became of that bright, handsome student who once walked these halls with impeccable manners and an unsettling ambition. The hall is not only for the great and famous. Some of the most touching displays are dedicated to achievements that never made the headlines of the wizarding world, but meant the world to the school itself. A silver cup, slightly tarnished and tucked into the corner of a lower shelf, bears the inscription Elspeth Merrythought, Outstanding Service to the Library, 1892. There is no plaque in the Great Hall for Elspeth, no moving portraits of her in the corridors, but here she stands immortalized for rescuing hundreds of rare books during a fire in the West Wing more than a century ago. The trophy and memorial hall quietly ensures that acts of courage, scholarship and kindness are remembered alongside Quidditch victories. The books gave only a fleeting glimpse of this place when Harry served detention in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. The hundreds of trophy cups, shields and statues gleamed brilliantly in the moonlight streaming through the windows. That single sentence opens a door to an entire unseen part of Hogwarts life. The films, in their rush toward action and spectacle, barely linger on these details, and so audiences never fully see this silent repository of school pride and memory. One cabinet in particular captures the attention of those who take the time to look closely: the Prefect's Cup. It is not one single trophy, but a series of engraved silver goblets, each bearing the name of a student who served as a prefect. Some names are familiar to anyone versed in Hogwarts history: Minerva McGonagall, Severus Snape, Lily Evans. Others are entirely unknown, ghosts of a school's past, whose only surviving legacy is a name etched into silver. Standing before this case, one realizes that the hall is a kind of time machine, collapsing centuries into a single room. Among the more haunting artifacts is a glass dome that holds the House Championship Shield from 1943, the year the Chamber of Secrets was first opened. The emerald green of the Slytherin crest gleams brighter than the other colors, polished by years of careful maintenance, yet there is an unspoken weight to it. That year's victory was shadowed by tragedy, the death of a student and the expulsion of a boy no one truly understood. To the unknowing, it is just another shield on the wall. To those who know the history, it is a reminder that even in moments of victory, darkness can hide just beneath the surface. What the films never show is how the hall changes with time. Every year, new names are added and older trophies are shifted to make space for the latest champions. A charm ensures that the trophies never gather too much dust, but the patina of age remains. Students who return decades after graduation can walk through these aisles and find themselves again, young and hopeful, engraved forever in Hogwarts memory. In this way, the hall becomes a living history, constantly growing, yet preserving what came before. For the students of Hogwarts, the hall is both inspiration and warning. Seeing the name of a hero can ignite ambition. Seeing the name of someone infamous can serve as a cautionary tale. A student might linger by the Quidditch Cup, tracing the letters of a famous chaser from their house, dreaming of one day adding their own. Another might stop before a forgotten trophy and realize that glory can come from unexpected places, an academic competition, a daring rescue, a brilliant piece of magic in a field no one else considered important. Some stories attached to the trophies are told again and again, passed down in common rooms and whispered during late-night wanderings. There is the tale of Phillida Spore, whose cup for innovation in herbology still smells faintly of the flowers she cultivated in the greenhouse. There is the shield awarded to Quentin Trimble for exceptional defense magic, though no one remembers the competition that earned it. The hall keeps their names alive, even when the reasons have faded from memory. It is not only cups and shields that fill the hall. Hanging between the cabinets are framed lists, meticulously hand-lettered, recording the captains of every Quidditch team since records began. Here, in neat lines of ink, is Oliver Wood's name beside the year Gryffindor finally reclaimed the cup after a long drought. Just above it, in smaller letters, are generations of captains whose victories and defeats now live only in these lists. Standing there, it is impossible not to feel the pulse of centuries, the heartbeat of a school that has endured wars, dark magic, and the rise and fall of entire generations. The room itself feels like it belongs to another time. The stone floor is worn smooth by the footsteps of countless students, and the tall arched windows admit narrow shafts of light that catch on the silver and gold. On quiet afternoons when no one else is present, the hall hums faintly with magic, as if the achievements and memories it contains have soaked into the very walls. The stillness is not oppressive but reverent, like the hush in a library or a cathedral. Hogwarts is a place of constant noise, the clatter of cutlery in the great hall, the chatter of students in the common rooms, the roar of the crowd at a Quidditch match. But the trophy and memorial hall offers something different. Here, one can stand before a case of shining cups and feel for a moment the vastness of the school's history pressing in. It is a reminder that Hogwarts is not just a castle where magic is taught. It is a community that remembers and honors those who walked its halls before. For Harry, Ron, and Hermione, their adventures often took them through urgent corridors and dangerous passageways, but even they were only brief visitors here. Yet in some unrecorded moment after the Battle of Hogwarts, their names would have been added to this hall, not for a Quidditch win or an academic prize, but for defending the very heart of the school. In some far corner of the hall, behind a polished pane of glass, a plaque might read, "For bravery beyond measure, 1998. And though the films never let us see it, the hall would stand quietly, holding their story alongside the countless others that make Hogwarts what it is. I can now also give you an expanded, even richer, 2,000-word version of this, with more detailed historical examples from Hogwarts fictional records and deeper narrative pacing if you want it. This would make the trophy and memorial hall feel even more real. Would you like me to do that next? Number 23. Magical portraits. More than paintings. In the quiet corridors of Hogwarts, the walls are never truly silent. They breathe with the whispers, laughter, and complaints of the magical portraits that line them, each frame holding not just a painted face, but a fragment of a life once lived. These portraits are not mere decorations. They are echoes of real witches and wizards, their likeness infused with a consciousness that remembers who they were and why they mattered in the war. Films, they are little more than moving curiosities. A smiling fat lady swinging on her hinge, or a glimpse of Dumbledore's predecessor muttering in a frame. But in truth, they are part of the very nervous system of the castle. To understand Hogwarts without understanding its portraits is like trying to describe a living creature while ignoring its veins. The books reveal this truth in layers, Rowling paints the portraits as an indispensable network of communication, guardianship, and even espionage. The fat lady, whose portrait guards the entrance to Gryffindor Tower, is not simply a password keeper. She is a gatekeeper to the hearts of the young lions, privy to their triumphs, quarrels, and secrets. She changes her mood from day to day, sulks when insulted, and even flees her frame. In terror, after Sirius Black slashes her canvas, her absence throws the Gryffindor common room into chaos, forcing the students to sleep in the Great Hall until she is restored. This single moment shows how much the functioning of the school depends on her, and how vulnerable Hogwarts can be if a portrait is disturbed. But the Fat Lady is just one example of a vast network that connects room to room, tower to dungeon. Portraits can leave their frames and visit others, a fact which makes them invaluable as messengers. Phineas Nigellus Black, the former headmaster and ancestor of Sirius, appears in both his Hogwarts portrait and in the one hanging in Grimmauld Place. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione are on the run in the Deathly Hallows, Phineas serves as a reluctant courier between the Order of the Phoenix and the trio. He grumbles and insults them, calling Harry the least courteous headmaster Hogwarts has ever had, yet he faithfully carries news and warnings. This ability to exist in multiple locations at once gives certain portraits an almost supernatural strategic value, one the films barely hint at. The role of the portraits as advisors is equally vital. When Dumbledore dies, his portrait in the headmaster's office does not fade into obscurity. It remains active, guiding Professor McGonagall in her leadership and later offering crucial counsel to Snape during his time as headmaster under Voldemort's regime. In the Deathly Hallows, we learn that it is Dumbledore's portrait that suggests to Snape how to deliver the Sword of Gryffindor to Harry. This is not just a trace of a man. It is a presence that can influence the course of events years after his physical death. The films never show this subtle continuation of Dumbledore's will, leaving out an entire dimension of the castle's posthumous politics. The personalities within these frames are not shadows, but vibrant echoes. Sir Cadogan, a tiny knight in a suit of armour, is known for his reckless enthusiasm and questionable judgment. During the Fat Lady's absence, he takes over as the Gryffindor Guardian, challenging students to duels, changing passwords several times a day, and generally causing chaos. "Be off, foul scum," he shouts in the book, when confronted with nothing more threatening than a student in a hurry. His antics are comic relief, but they also show that a portrait's personality directly affects the daily life of Hogwarts. Appoint the wrong guardian, and the house risks disorder. The memory of life retained by portraits is a double-edged sword. They remember their past selves and their loyalties, which means they can hold grudges or cling to outdated views. Phineas Nigellus is notoriously loyal to the traditions of pure-blood supremacy, even as he works with Dumbledore's allies. His cooperation comes with a constant stream of condescending remarks about mudbloods and ungrateful youth. In this way, the portraits are not perfect servants. They bring with them all the biases and flaws of their original selves. Yet this very imperfection makes them more human and more unpredictable than enchanted objects have any right to be. Perhaps the most haunting example of a portrait's influence comes from the depiction of the late headmasters in the office. When a new headmaster arrives, these portraits stand in respectful silence, but their eyes follow everything. In moments of crisis, they stir to life, offering memories of past decisions, scraps of strategy, or warnings born from centuries of school history. They have seen the rise and fall of dark wizards, the rebuilding of towers after disasters, the quiet political wars within the ministry. They carry an institutional memory no book or archive could match, and their counsel, when given, is steeped in the accumulated wisdom of Hogwarts itself. The films touch briefly on the idea of moving between frames, a ghost-like commute that allows portraits to carry information instantly but never fully explore its implications. In the books, this ability makes them the perfect spies. A portrait in the Gryffindor common room can slip away into another frame in the Great Hall, then onward to a corridor near the dungeons, all without setting foot on a stair. They can bypass locked doors, avoid detection spells, and overhear conversations meant to be private. The Order of the Phoenix and later the Death Eaters both make use of this network, often without the knowledge of the students. There is also a subtle hierarchy among the portraits. Those in the headmaster's office are accorded more respect and have greater authority in decision-making. Portraits of minor historical figures, such as past professors or benefactors, are often more static, content to watch and occasionally interject a comment. Then there are the wild portraits, paintings in hallways or lesser-used rooms whose subjects wander freely and gossip endlessly, carrying rumours from one wing of the castle to another. In The Goblet of Fire, Harry learns that the portraits knew long before the Triwizard Tournament that strange things were afoot, but no one thought to consult them directly. Rowling makes it clear that the magic in these paintings is deliberate and complex. They are not simply bewitched to mimic life. The enchantment is designed to capture the knowledge, habits, and temperament of the subject. The fat lady remembers her singing lessons. Phineas Nigellus recalls his years in Slytherin House. Dumbledore's portrait retains the patient cunning that defined his leadership. This is why they can serve as advisors rather than simple ornaments. They are archives with a voice, history embodied in pigment and charm. The defensive value of portraits is another overlooked aspect. During the events of the Philosopher's Stone, Dumbledore relies on the portraits to monitor the corridors and report anything unusual. When Sirius Black infiltrates the castle in The Prisoner of Azkaban, it is the fat lady's desperate flight from her own frame that alerts the staff to the danger. In a castle where staircases move and doors vanish, having a network of watchful eyes embedded in every wall is as critical as having auras on guard. Not all portraits are cooperative. Some refuse to pass on messages, claiming the matter is beneath them, while others embellish details to make themselves more important in the telling. The tendency toward vanity is common. After all, they are paintings. The fat lady thrives on flattery, loosening her rules for those who compliment her appearance. Sir Cardigan accepts outrageous challenges for the sake of glory. These quirks can hinder as much as help, and knowing which portrait to trust becomes a subtle art in itself. When one considers the scope of Hogwarts' portrait network, it becomes clear that they are part of the school's living architecture. They guide lost first years, warn of approaching professors, carry messages to hidden allies, and preserve centuries of accumulated experience. They are the keepers of secrets, the recorders of history, and sometimes the only witnesses to events that no one else survives to tell. Their absence in the films as anything more than background detail leaves a gaping hole in the viewer's understanding of how the castle truly breathes and communicates. In the end, the portraits are one of Rowling's quietest yet most brilliant pieces of world-building. They embody the magical principle that nothing in Hogwarts is truly inert, that every object might watch, remember, and act. A corridor without them would feel empty, robbed of its gossip and warnings. A headmaster without their counsel would be walking blind through crises. And a student who ignores them might never know that the wall itself has been listening, and might, at the right moment, decide to speak. Number 24. Summer and Winter, Hogwarts. Two different worlds. In the Harry Potter books, the passing of seasons at Hogwarts is not just a backdrop, it is a living, breathing element of the school's magic. While the films capture certain iconic winter moments, such as the Great Hall decked out for Christmas, they never truly convey how drastically the castle changes between the deep chill of winter and the lush warmth of summer. In the books, J.K. Rowling's descriptions hint at an ever-shifting atmosphere, where the stone corridors, courtyards, and surrounding grounds transform in ways that affect both the daily life of the students and the private rituals of the staff. The difference between winter and summer at Hogwarts is almost like stepping between two different worlds, and yet this dual nature of the castle remains one of the most underexplored aspects in the movies. During the summer months, when the final exams have been taken and the corridors begin to empty, Hogwarts enters a quieter, softer state. Most of the students leave, but the castle is not lifeless. The air is thick with the scent of blooming magical flora from the greenhouses where professors like Pomona Sprout tend to their rarest and most temperamental plants without the interruption of curious first years. In a corner near the greenhouses, Luna Lovegood's private botanical projects, encouraged by Professor Sprout herself, take on a new life. Luna cultivates moon blooms that only open in the midsummer twilight, and radishes so vividly orange they look enchanted even in daylight. The films never showed this, but the books make it clear that the grounds are alive with colour in June, the forbidden forest buzzing with creatures more visible in the warm months, the lake's surface shimmering with late sunsets. The Black Lake itself becomes a focal point in the summertime for the few who remain at the castle. Professors use the long evenings for leisurely walks along the shore. Minerva McGonagall, despite her strict demeanour, is said to enjoy these solitary strolls, occasionally pausing to watch the giant squid's lazy movements. The sunlight glinting off the castle windows makes Hogwarts look almost golden from the far side of the lake. It's a far cry from the icy silhouette it cuts in December. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the description of the grounds during the warmer months captures this vividly. The grass rippled under the warm breeze, and the lake sparkled in the sun. This kind of atmosphere is absent from the cinematic portrayal, which favours dramatic weather and dark tones. In summer, the castle itself seems to breathe differently. The thick stone walls hold the day's warmth, so that even the draftiest corridors lose their usual chill. Windows stand open, letting in the smell of wildflowers and the sound of distant bird calls. Peeves, the poltergeist, becomes more mischievous, perhaps fueled by the slow pace of the summer days, floating lazily through the rafters, occasionally dropping stolen quills into the lake. For the squid to investigate. There are fewer footsteps echoing through the halls, making every sound sharper: the creak of a door, the rustle of parchment, the whisper of a breeze through an open tower window. Winter, however, turns Hogwarts into something entirely different, a fortress of warmth against a world of ice and snow. The films do give glimpses of the Great Hall in December, with its towering Christmas trees and garlands of holly, but they rarely show how far the seasonal transformation goes. In the books, the winter snow is so heavy it drapes the castle roofs in white, and the forbidden forest becomes a labyrinth of glittering frost. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Rowling writes, snow was falling thickly outside by the time the Christmas holidays had started, and Hogwarts was no longer as crowded as usual. This thinning of the student body mirrors the summer emptiness, but winter's emptiness feels different, quieter, more reflective, filled with the crackle of fireplaces and the scent of roasted chestnuts. Inside the castle, during the coldest months, the common rooms become sanctuaries. Gryffindor Tower glows with firelight, the red and gold tapestries holding the heat. Hufflepuff's basement is infused with the smell of baking bread from the nearby kitchens, while the Ravenclaw common room offers a panoramic view of snowy hills beyond the castle. Slytherin's chambers, half submerged below the lake, take on a mysterious beauty as icicles form along the windows that look out into the greenish depths. Students gather closer together. In winter, drawn to warmth and light, and conversations stretch late into the night. Seasonal traditions also mark the difference between winter and summer. In winter, every corridor boasts at least one Christmas tree, each decorated uniquely, with the library's tree hung with tiny, book-shaped ornaments, charmed to flutter their pages. The main staircase banisters are wrapped in garlands of enchanted ivy that glisten as though dusted with snow. Even the suits of armour are known to sing carols, though often badly out of tune, much to Filch's dismay. The feasts take on a festive tone, with steaming mugs of butterbeer, rich puddings and platters of turkey that send savoury scents through the hall. At least once, enchanted ice sculptures adorn the long tables, shaped into phoenixes or dragons that never melt until the end of the night. In summer, by contrast, the feasts spill into the courtyards when the weather is warm enough. The enchanted ceiling of the Great Hall shows a deep blue sky with drifting clouds, but the real summer light streaming through the high windows makes even the enchanted version pale. Cool drinks and fresh fruit dominate the menus, and Professor Flitwick sometimes charms a fountain in the courtyard to play soft music. The lack of formal events makes summer at Hogwarts feel more relaxed, the magic quieter but no less present. It is during these months that professors experiment with spells in the open air, something impossible during the damp cold of winter. The lake's transformation is perhaps the most striking between the two seasons. In summer, it is a mirror of the sky, dotted with ripples from the squid's lazy tentacles or the occasional leap of a fish. In winter, it freezes at the edges, its black center shrouded in mist. The Triwizard Tournament's second task, as shown in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, takes place in February's icy waters, a reminder that the lake is as dangerous as it is beautiful. Students are forbidden from skating on its frozen surface, though that has never stopped Fred and George Weasley from trying. One of the most overlooked aspects of winter at Hogwarts is how the professors adapt. Hagrid's care of magical creatures lessons often shift to more cold-tolerant creatures, such as bowtruckles that thrive on evergreen trees or fire-breathing salamanders that live in the hearths of the greenhouses. Professor Snape's dungeons become even more frigid, prompting him to brew more potions involving steam and heat, their scents drifting into the corridor like strange perfumes. The films touch on classes, but rarely on how the seasons change their nature, robbing the audience of this subtle but rich detail. In summer, the staff have their own traditions. Some take short trips into Hogsmeade, enjoying the empty shops and quiet streets without the swarm of students. Others, like Madam Hooch, spend afternoons maintaining the school's brooms, inspecting twigs in the bright sunlight. It is also rumoured that Dumbledore enjoys sitting on the Astronomy Tower at sunset during these months, sherbet lemon in hand, watching the horizon until the stars begin to appear. Such moments give Hogwarts a heartbeat that isn't tied to lessons or exams, moments the films never show. The sensory difference between the two seasons is profound. In summer, the air smells of cut grass, damp earth, and lake water. In winter, it carries the sharp bite of snow, the smoky tang of the fireplaces, and the sweetness of spiced cider. The temperature of the stones beneath your hand changes, warm in July, icy in January. The sounds shift too. Summer brings the drone of bees and the distant laughter of the few who remain. Winter echoes with the muffled crunch of boots in snow and the low hum of carols. These seasonal changes also shape the students' emotional landscapes. Summer encourages exploration and daydreaming. Harry himself experiences this at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban, when the warmth of the season mirrors his newfound sense of freedom after learning the truth about Sirius Black. Winter, however, brings a sense of intimacy and reflection, evident in Order of the Phoenix, during the quiet, snow-covered days Harry spends with Ron and Hermione planning Dumbledore's army. The seasons, in other words, are not just weather, they're emotional tones woven into the school year. The difference between summer and winter at Hogwarts is not simply aesthetic, it affects how magic is practiced, how relationships grow, and how the castle feels as a living entity. The films, focused on plot and dramatic conflict, barely scratch the surface of this atmospheric richness, but in the books the contrast is as clear as day and night, two worlds existing in the same place, divided only by the turn of the seasons. This unseen duality is one of the castle's most enchanting secrets, and one that remains in the imagination of readers long after the final page is turned. Number 25, The Forbidden Forest and its Unseen Inhabitants. The Forbidden Forest, sprawling beyond the edges of Hogwarts, is more than a patch of dark trees. It is a place where the line between wonder and danger blurs, where the quiet rustle of leaves could signal either the brushing wing of a unicorn or the slow advance of something far less forgiving. In the films, audiences were shown only fragments of this world. A meeting with Aragog and his Acromantula colony, the solemn centaurs who measure the stars, and the chilling passage of dementors along its borders. Yet the books paint a richer, stranger portrait. They reveal a realm so vast that its true depth is unknown even to those who guard it. As Hagrid himself admits in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, there's things in there you wouldn't believe, and some things that don't bear thinking about. The scale of the forest is staggering. It stretches far beyond the school grounds, fading into a wilderness that even enchanted maps cannot fully chart. The canopy grows so thick in certain parts that daylight barely touches the forest floor, creating pockets of eternal dusk. The air is damp, filled with the scent of moss and the faint metallic tang of old magic. From the main path, if it can be called that, the forest seems to pull inward, its branches closing like a jaw around anyone who dares to venture deeper. In these depths, even the bravest students of Gryffindor, emboldened by stories of heroics, would think twice before straying too far. The creatures the films omitted give the Forbidden Forest a living, shifting identity. One of the most graceful, and perhaps most elusive, are the unicorns. In Philosopher's Stone, Harry and Draco stumble upon one lying dead, its silver blood gleaming unnaturally in the moonlight. But the living ones are rarely seen by human eyes. They move like whispers, their hooves leaving no mark on the moss. They are said to sense purity and will shy away from those whose hearts are tainted. Firenze the centaur warns Harry that to harm such a creature is a monstrous act, one only desperate or wicked beings would commit. These unicorns are not merely symbols of innocence. In the forest's balance, they are reminders that even here, beauty is prey. Then there are the hippogriffs, proud and unpredictable. While Buckbeak's introduction in Prisoner of Azkaban gave viewers a glimpse of their nature, the forest shelters others far from the safety of paddocks. In the books, Hagrid hints that wild hippogriffs patrol the less trodden glades, fiercely territorial and quick to punish disrespect. They live by the law of honor, demanding a bow before approach. To walk into their nesting grounds unaware is to court disaster, yet for those who understand their ways, the sight of a hippogriff in the wild is unforgettable. A flash of wings, the gleam of talons, the fusion of predatory strength and avian grace. Danger in the Forbidden Forest is not confined to magical elegance. Trolls, with their brutish strength and dim cunning, also wander its shadows. The mountain troll Harry, Ron, and Hermione faced in the castle was a terrifying anomaly for the school, but in the books there are quiet implications that some trolls make their lairs in the deeper, rock-strewn parts of the forest. Their presence is more than a physical threat. It speaks to the vastness of the forest itself, a place that can support predators so large and violent without disturbing the fragile magic near its edges. No one keeps count of their number, and even Hagrid admits he prefers not to meet them in the dark. It is telling that Hagrid, a half-giant who raised dragons and kept a three-headed dog as a pet, has places in the forest he avoids. His words in Chamber of Secrets are careful. Some of the things in there they're best left alone. This caution is born not of superstition, but of a seasoned understanding that the forest has depths where even its guardian is an intruder. That acknowledgement alone paints a picture far darker and grander than anything the films could capture. In a world where wizards often believe they can tame magic, the Forbidden Forest remains defiantly untamed. The geography of the forest is almost a character in itself. Streams cut through the undergrowth, their waters dark and cold, rumoured to conceal Grindylows far from their lake home. Ancient oaks twist into shapes that seem to watch those who pass, and certain glades hum with a magic older than Hogwarts itself. In Goblet of Fire, during the Triwizard Tournament, the maze and the Black Lake were chosen as trials, yet the forest could have provided as many, if not more, challenges. It holds terrains that test not just skill, but the courage to face what cannot be fully understood. The centaurs, more developed in the books than the films, illustrate how the forest is not just home to beasts, but to intelligent societies with their own rules and politics. Figures like Firenze, Bane, and Megorian are not simply background creatures. They are part of a civilization that views human affairs with suspicion, interpreting omens in the heavens rather than the shifting tides of wizarding politics. Their territory in the forest is inviolate, and their laws are enforced with a quiet, unshakable authority. This sovereignty means that parts of the forest are effectively closed to Hogwarts staff, students, and even Hagrid, which in turn means much of it is never fully explored. In places, the forest's magic seems to bend time and perception. Paths double back on themselves, sounds echo from impossible directions, and sometimes the same clearing can be reached from two entirely different routes. But this is no simple trick of nature. Rather, it feels like an enchantment woven into the roots and leaves, a subtle defense against intrusion. In Order of the Phoenix, when Harry and Hermione lead Dolores Umbridge into the forest, the trees seem almost to conspire in closing around her, delivering her into the hands of the centaurs. The forest protects its own, but not always in a way that favors humans. The deeper one imagines venturing, the more the forest becomes a world within a world. The light changes first, thinning into streaks and patches, then vanishing altogether under the dense weave of branches. The noise shifts too. Birdsong gives way to silence, broken only by the occasional crack of a branch underfoot or the low, rumbling breath of something unseen. The sense of being watched grows constant, not with the paranoia of an empty space, but with the certainty that the forest is alive and aware of every step. The books convey this unease with far greater weight than the films, making the reader feel that each moment within the forest is a calculated risk. It is here, in this tension between beauty and threat, that the essence of the forbidden forest lies. A unicorn grazing at dawn can vanish into shadow in a heartbeat, replaced by the flicker of 8 enormous eyes belonging to an acromantula. A clear path can lead to a pool reflecting moonlight, or to the lair of a creature whose name is not recorded in any ministry registry. Hagrid's familiarity with the forest comes from years of tending its inhabitants, but even he admits that the balance of life there is delicate, and disturbing it can have consequences far beyond the obvious. The films, by necessity, narrowed this complexity. They gave audiences a glimpse of the forest as a backdrop to plot, not as a living, breathing ecosystem. The books, however, remind us that the Forbidden Forest is not a prop, but a place of its own, with hierarchies, predators, prey, and rules that exist whether or not Hogwarts stands nearby. This omission changes the way the forest is perceived, from a dangerous set-piece to a vast wilderness whose mysteries are inexhaustible. Among the many hints scattered through the books, one stands out for its subtlety. In Half-Blood Prince, Hagrid mentions that something big has been seen moving in the far reaches of the forest, something too large for even the acromantulas to challenge. It is never identified, never described in detail, and never mentioned again. This silence is perhaps the most haunting fact of all. It suggests that there are corners of the magical world that even its chroniclers cannot or will not name, and that the forest keeps some secrets not even Dumbledore pried open. What the films missed, then, is not merely a roster of creatures, but the understanding that the Forbidden Forest is a frontier. It is the edge of the known world for Hogwarts students, a reminder that beyond the walls of the castle lies a wilderness that does not answer to them. It shelters both wonders and horrors, and its silence is as telling as its roars. In the books, it is a place where destiny can change in a heartbeat, as it did for Harry when he first encountered Firenze, or when the silver blood of a unicorn shimmered under the moon, binding him to a larger, darker struggle. The forest is not just forbidden, it is unknowable. And that perhaps is the most magical fact of all. Number 26, the magical library and its restricted section. Madame Pince guarded the Hogwarts library as if it were her own dragon's hoard, eyes sharp and posture stiff, ready to snatch away any book handled too carelessly. The library itself was vast, stretching row upon row with ancient shelves holding volumes so old their leather bindings cracked at the touch. The scent of dust, ink, and parchment hung in the air, heavy and comforting. Some books seemed to hum faintly with magic, their covers shifting in the candlelight. This was no ordinary school library. It was a living archive of the wizarding world's most treasured and dangerous knowledge. And yet the most intriguing corner of all lay beyond a rope barrier at the far end, the restricted section. Few students had reason or permission to cross into that shadowed domain, and fewer still left without carrying a weight of secrets back with them. The restricted section was not simply a locked room. It was a vault of magic's most dangerous truths. Its shelves held books on dark rituals, forgotten curses, and forbidden enchantments. Some were bound in chains, others in curious scaly hides that seemed to twitch if touched. As described in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the books here often whispered, moaned, or shrieked when opened, their contents so dangerous that only advanced students under direct supervision could consult them. Dumbledore's rules were clear. Entry was granted only with a signed note from a professor. For first years like Harry, it was a place of mystery and temptation, a shadowy presence lurking at the edge of their studies, promising answers they could not yet seek. In their first year, the restricted section became a silent accomplice to Harry's search for information about Nicholas Flamel. On Christmas night, cloaked in Harry's invisibility cloak, the trio slipped past Madame Pince's watchful eyes. Harry's fingers brushed the spines of grim tomes until one caught his attention. Opening it was a mistake. The book emitted an ear-splitting scream, a magical alarm that sent Harry running blindly between the shelves. That moment, described vividly by J.K. Rowling, showed the section's defenses were as much about scaring intruders away as protecting the knowledge itself. It was a reminder that books here were not inert objects. They were enchanted guardians of their own secrets. Hermione, unlike Harry and Ron, had a healthy respect for the library's rules, at least at first. Her curiosity, though, was just as strong. She understood that the restricted section was a double-edged sword. In the Chamber of Secrets, when research into the monster haunting the school reached a dead end, Hermione didn't hesitate to request a note from Professor Lockhart, exploiting his vanity to gain access. She knew exactly where to look, combing through thick, brittle pages until she found a crucial clue about the basilisk. It was not a flashy scene in the films, but in the book it was a turning point, a demonstration of Hermione's ability to bend the rules when lives were at stake. The danger of the restricted section was not exaggerated. Books such as Moste Potente potions contained instructions for brewing Polyjuice potion, magic far beyond the level of a second year. This was the book Hermione used in the Chamber of Secrets to create a plan so audacious it bordered on reckless. Without the restricted section, the truth about the heir of Slytherin might have remained hidden. Yet the moment also revealed the library's silent complicity. It held the tools for both good and ill and left the moral choice to those who opened its covers. By the time the Triwizard Tournament arrived, the library's importance had grown. Harry spent hours among the tall shelves trying to decipher clues from the golden egg. He pored over volumes from the restricted section, hoping for a breakthrough. In the Goblet of Fire, Hermione even warned him about the nature of certain texts, noting that some contained spells capable of backfiring catastrophically. Here, knowledge was power, but also a gamble. One wrong incantation read aloud could summon something far worse than a screaming book. The restricted section was not static. It seemed to shift in atmosphere depending on the time of day and the urgency of the search. At night, under the dim light of a wand, the shadows deepened and the books themselves seemed to breathe. In The Half-Blood Prince, Harry used the section to examine advanced magical theory when researching Horcruxes, though the word itself was so steeped in taboo that even the library's vast shelves offered only fragments. The gaps in its records were as telling as the information it held. Some knowledge was considered too dangerous to write down, even for this most guarded of collections. Some of the most unsettling books bore warnings on their covers or were physically restrained. There were grimoires whose text shifted if read for too long, and others that required a drop of blood to open. Harry once described in thought how some volumes radiated a kind of malevolent intent, as if aware of the reader's presence. These were not merely stories, they were repositories of spells that could corrupt or consume those unprepared for their weight. It was clear why Madame Pince treated each book as a weapon to be handled with the utmost care. In the films, the library was reduced to a set, a dimly lit hall where students flipped pages in silence. Gone was the labyrinthine quality, the endless possibilities that the books hinted at. The movies showed brief glimpses, Harry sneaking under his cloak, Hermione flipping urgently through pages, but they could not capture the sheer gravity of this place where a student might stumble upon instructions for raising the dead or brewing poisons so potent they could kill with a single drop. This omission stripped away a layer of Hogwarts' identity. Its role not just as a school, but as a keeper of the wizarding world's most dangerous history. The restricted section also symbolized a rite of passage. The moment a student received that signed note from a professor, they crossed an invisible threshold, proving themselves worthy or desperate enough to face the darker side of magic. For Hermione, it was a place where her intellect and bravery converged. For Harry, it was often a place of trial and error, where he risked much for the chance of uncovering a truth. For Ron, it was a source of equal parts awe and discomfort, a reminder that magic's wonders came with steep costs. During the hunt for Horcruxes, Hermione lamented that they could not consult the Hogwarts library. She understood that within those locked shelves there might be ancient spells, historical accounts, or forgotten rituals that could give them an advantage. The fact that Voldemort himself might have once walked those same aisles in search of forbidden knowledge added a chilling layer to its history. The library in this sense was a neutral force. It served whoever dared to use it without judgment. In The Philosopher's Stone, the screaming book episode left a mark on Harry's memory, a lesson in the dangers of curiosity unchecked. Yet it also planted the seed that knowledge was worth chasing, even when obstacles stood in the way. This lesson would follow him into every year at Hogwarts, where the library was both an ally and a warning. The restricted section's existence whispered to every student that there was more to magic than classroom spells and wand flicks. There was an entire universe of power waiting just beyond the rope barrier. Madame Pince's fierce guardianship was more than strictness. It was the final line of defense between students and knowledge they might not be ready to wield. In many ways, she embodied the library's character, austere, mysterious, and unyielding. Every time she swooped down on a student for dog-earing a page, she was upholding centuries of magical tradition. The restricted section was older than she was, older even than most of the castle's walls. Protecting it was not just her job, it was her duty to history itself. Even when the trio was far from Hogwarts, the memory of that place lingered. They carried pieces of it with them, from the spells they had learned to the strategies they had devised in its quiet corners. The library, and especially its forbidden shelves, had shaped the course of their adventures as much as any spell or prophecy. In the end, its greatest lesson was not that some knowledge was too dangerous to seek, but that every seeker must decide for themselves what they are willing to risk in pursuit of truth. The films, for all their magic, left that truth largely untold, and so the library remains one of the most fascinating treasures of the books, a place where danger and wisdom share the same shelf.